All right, welcome to my course on Entity Framework Core, and this is the first video in here. And what we will be doing over here is like we will be starting from the very scratch on a console application, and there we shall be adding the entity framework, all the libraries, and we shall try to see how easy it is actually if you want to communicate with your database. So all this would be covered. And the focus of this video is to introduce you to the entity framework core world. So even if you are aware and have context of the entity framework world, I'll still request you to watch the video. It can give you quick understanding on some of these concepts that you might be missing out. And if you are coming here for the first time, I'll request you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon, because this is going to be a very in detail and in-depth course, and a lot of videos will be coming down the line. It will take some time for me to push the videos up over here, but again, just you don't miss out anything, I'll request you to press the bell icon. So without wasting any further time, let's start the course. Let's begin.
Alright, so what I have on my screen is an empty solution. There are no projects or anything added to it. So to get our first project or module up and running, let's quickly add a console project. And that is pretty simple. You should already know that. In case you not, add a new project. And we have to select a type, which we will select as console project.NET Core. So I have used the same name and added the test console as a suffix to that, and then we create next or create, and it will create a command line project for us, which is up ready to go. All right, let's quickly do a build solution just to validate everything is running, and it should build successfully. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do is to add our entity. Now, when we say entity framework, entities can be considered as analogous to our tables. So let's say we want to have a new table, let's call it user, and that will hold the basic details such as the first name, last name, and date of birth. So we can add that. Let's quickly add that. And that is also pretty easy. Just go over here, add a new class, and the important thing over here is that the classes that we use, these are the POCO classes. They don't have any implementation as in them, and we will just type user over here and it will create a good and fine class for us. All right, so I'll quickly add a few properties over here. Alright, so what we have over here is a basic class, or you can call it a basic table called user, and that have four properties or four columns in itself: the ID, first name, last name, and the date of birth. Alright, so now when we have our entity ready, the next thing that we need to do is to add our DbContext. Now we shall be going into details of these terminology once we progress on, but for now just consider DbContext as an DAL or interface between your database that helps you communicate and call out the queries. So let's quickly add, and again the thing is very simple. You just need to go over here, right click, add new item and class, and then so the convention over here is whenever you want to, let's say, create a new DbContext, you should ideally suffix it with a DbContext. It's not something that we have to do, but ideally a good and a better practice that we try to follow, just to isolate and identify easily like what we are doing. All right, so now I have that. So this class is ready, and now before we can actually work upon this, we need to do a few changes, and changes as in we need to add a few packages in our application, and that we can do directly over here. Just right click on the project name, go to manage Nuget Packages, and if you go over here, go to browse and put in entity framework core .SQL server. So we can use the entity framework or entity framework core. This is the base package that we intend to use. But since we are also be referring to this database as well, so we can just refer the entity framework core or SQL Server. And if you see over here, it internally calls these packages, this relational one and the SQL client. And if we go to relational, we will see like it has these nested dependencies on the Microsoft Entity Framework core. So this package ultimately that is responsible for all the support is indirectly being referred upon. So we will just use this package which calls all the dependencies directly. Just press the install button over here. And guys, by the time it happens, all these code that we are doing across the complete course would be available on GitHub. The link is in description. So basically it will install a couple of libraries over here and we have to accept the license agreement. Yes, I accept, and it will like do all the magic. All right, so we have the DbContext class. The next thing that we need to do is to derive this class from our DbContext class. And that is actually pretty easy. And what we need to do is to derive this class from this namespace, Microsoft.entity framework core, and done. All right, so this is pretty much that we need to do in terms of setup of the DbContext. But now we also want to expose our users table inside the code. And to do that, it's pretty easy. We just need to, let me just create a prop and of type db set. We have to give a type, what type we are exposing, and the name of the table. Well, that's pretty much. With this particular object or a property, we can access and do all the operations on our users table, including like all the CRUD operations, queries, joins, whatever we intend to do that. So that all could be done very easily. But right now this is a command or console project, and we also need to like define what database needs to be accessed. And if you know, in .NET Core, the ideal way of doing that is to use connection strings. And somehow we need to have a mechanism where we can easily pass on these connection string inside this DbContext so that it knows where it needs to connect those. We will be doing that in a more structured way, how you would actually do once we move in the future modules. How does that actually happens? But just for the sake of simplicity, for this module, we will use override. We will override a method called model on configuring. And what it does is basically this method is responsible for connection. So like whenever you are trying to configure a database or configuring any of these options, this method is being called. And within this method, it's actually pretty easy. We just need to use this options dot use SQL server, which is right over here, and we need to pass in our connection string. All right, let me just quickly put the connection string over here. All right, so we have set up our connection string, and if you see over here what we are trying to do, it's nothing complex as such. We just have a data source where we define what server we are connecting to, basically the host name or the server name, and we shall be using the local DB based version. So in very simple terms, local DB can be considered as a very miniature version of SQL Server that we shall be using over here, and this is the instance name. In case you are having any other server, you just need to provide the host name or those specific details over here. And then we have an initial catalog, which is the database that we have to use. In this case, I'll just use a test DB, and let's add a number as well, just to easily identify. And for the credentials, we are using integrated security set to true. All right, so that's pretty much we need to connect to a database, and there's just one more step left. So there's just one more thing that we need to do, and that is basically we need to create the migrations. So we will be covering the migrations part at length in the future modules. For the scope of this module, I'll just do a fast forward and set those up. All right. So by the time this reference, the project reference adds, so what we are doing, basically we need to add this one specific package called Microsoft.Entity Framework Design. And this package is needed whenever we need to run the migrations on. So, okay, there is a typo over here. Now it should ideally work. Let's see. All right, it has found the package, pulling in all those. Yups, and done. Adding the migration. So if you are at solution level, you need to define the project name or the executable path. In the current version, I just need to switch my directory to the test console project, and there I can hit the command. It will first do a build and then it will add these migrations. All right, so it has added the migrations, and if you go into your solution, you will see those. There's a folder called migrations folder, and there are two files. So we would be going into details in the migrations module, each of these files. But for this module, we can say like for all the migrations that we generate, one file for each migration, just like this, will be created. If you see over here, it has all the details of like how to create or configure those that we can see. First name, last name, all the columns and types, everything is defined over here. Now just let's quickly execute these migrations. And if you might have noticed, this is just a single command that we need to call, and it very beautifully executes all these migrations, create all the tables and everything in our database. It is giving me some error. We will try to fix those when we will move with the further projects. And if you see, the migrations have been successfully applied. All right, so now we it says the migration has been successfully added, but in case we need to verify it, how can we do that? That is actually pretty easy. I'll just quickly copy the connection string from here, and what we need to do is we need to go into our server explorer, then click data connections, add a new connection, and it will give us all the options. So I'll select a SQL server because that's a driver that we are going to use. And I will go over here. Let me just paste the server name and I can use this. Why it is showing us test DB? That is something that we need to see. Ideally, it should be the test db1 what we have defined over here. Anyways, we will look into that. But for now, if you see, so we have this table up and ready. So this is the users table that we added. So it has the primary key, ID, first name, last name, date of birth, and we also have these EF migration history. So if we just try to match this, so this is the migration that we have run, and the same shall be visible here as well. If we just do show table data, it should show me all the migration. We have one right now for the current case, and that should show up over here. It'll take a while. All right, so this is the migration that we have. It's there. All right, so we are pretty much done for all the configurations and everything. And now if we want to use the database, it's pretty easy. Let's quickly create a connection and actually use that. I'll go into my program.cs and update a code over here. All right, so these three lines are pretty much that we need to insert a new row in our newly created database. And basically what we can do is just run it, and we'll see how the records are created in the database. it will take a while. And actually, or let's say if this is a case where you want to insert some sort of a master or seed data, so all those options are also available with EF that we will see in the future modules. We have a dedicated module planned for that part, and we have an error. I think we need to update the connection string back. That would be a problem. Let's try to run it now. I might not have saved this file at that point of time, so that would be the reason why the name was not captured correctly, and it is giving me an authentication error now. Let's see how it works. Yes, I think it is done, and I again missed adding the pointers. Let's quickly do that. And we are done. Now we can quickly view the database from our users table over here. That is one way of doing that. And if we see, we should see, I think, two users or two rows over here. Let's quickly validate that. And the next step that we will do is to query these two records. Let me just hit it again. All right, so here we are. If you see, we have these users. One is 211 or the other one is 2138. So they are successfully created, and date of birth is also recorded as 112,000, which should be fine. And if you have to fetch these two records, well, that is also pretty easy, and let's quickly do that as well. Alright, so this piece of code will query all the users. It will print the ID and the first name of all the users who are found. And with this execution, it should print 3 records. And that you can see, we have all the 3 records, 1, 2, and 3, and their first names. So that's pretty much. In this module, we have set up a command line console project and interfaced it with Entity Framework core. We created a migration. It's basically a quick start just to show how easy it is actually when you're using Entity Framework core for your DAL interface.
So guys, with this we conclude our first video. We have seen how we can add the entity framework very easily in our console application, get the ball rolling. But again, this is just the start. A lot of things are coming down the line. So in this we have just started with the console application, but that's not even the start of the world. There are a whole lot of things. In the next video we shall try to cover why you should use entity framework. It's more of a theoretical, but again, if you want to know more concepts, or if you're preparing for interviews or those discussions, that can be very much helpful. So after that, the actual game will begin. So if you are working on an enterprise application or production grade software, how you should actually position your files, how you should actually define the project structure. So how do you maintain certain aspects of clean code and solid principles, all those things would be covered up. So keep watching. And again, before closing out, if you like the video, hit the bell icon. That's going to give us a lot of motivation. And if you're coming here for the first time, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Thank you. Have a great day.